This is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Katie Koch and Joel Manke? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the alleged crime, then offer my analysis. Katie Koch was born on July 28, 1988, and lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She had a son in April of 2014 and another son in September of 2015. At some point, she became romantically involved with a man named Joel Manke. He had been born on January 5, 1985, so he was about 3.5 years older than Katie. Since 2007, Joel lived in a white, 1,460 square foot, 3-bedroom house located at 128 South 71st Street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is in the Blue Mound Heights neighborhood. Katie and her sons moved into Joel's house sometime in late 2019 or early 2020. The house is about 300 feet north of Interstate 94, but the smell of exhaust fumes could be considered refreshing compared to what Katie and Joel allegedly did to this house. Now moving to the timeline of the alleged crime. On Thursday, July 13, 2023, the police responded to the neighborhood where Katie and Joel lived after receiving multiple 911 calls indicating that 2 children were walking around the neighborhood with blood on them and without clothing. As it turns out, these 2 children were Katie's sons, ages 9 and 7. When the police arrived, they learned from neighbors that Katie had pulled one of the children into her house. As the police approached the house, 34-year-old Katie exited the residence through the side door. She appeared to be disheveled, anxious, agitated, and flustered. She was pacing and swaying her body back and forth. Katie was on the phone with a man. She could be heard saying, quote, "I'm standing outside in the driveway right now. Are you almost home so you can help explain what's going on? I love you, unquote. Katie explained to the police officer that her father just passed away and her children had broken a window in the house. The police said they needed to see the inside of the house. Upon making entry, they witnessed what was described as a house of horror. The floor was barely visible because there was so much trash piled on top of it. There was an overwhelming odor of feces and urine. A latch could be seen on the door for the bedroom occupied by Katie's sons, which allowed the door to be locked from the outside. Inside the bedroom, the walls were covered with feces. Katie insisted to the police that the substance on the walls was a combination of paint, chocolate, and clay, but it was obvious that she was being deceptive. The police described the condition of the house as being indicative of a terrible hoarding situation. When the police exited the house, they encountered Katie's 38-year-old boyfriend, Joel Manke, standing in the driveway. He told them that he had been living there since 2007 and that Katie and her children had lived there for about 3.5 years. He described himself as having a stepdad-type relationship with the children, and they called him Dad. The assistance he provided as far as raising the children was in the form of cooking and basic caretaking functions. Katie was responsible for the children's hygiene and putting them in bed at night. There was a board on a window for the children's bedroom. Joel said that he put it there to prevent the children from bothering a nosy neighbor. Joel admitted that the latch on the door was used to lock the children in the room overnight. He implied that the children had autism and would wander around. According to Joel, in the 3.5 years that Katie and her children lived with him, they had never gone to school. Joel was aware that the living conditions were not good, but said he had to pick his battles with Katie to avoid arguments. He never contacted the police or schools because he did not believe in doing that to family members. The police continued their investigation by interviewing several people in the neighborhood. Here's what the neighbors had to say. A 62-year-old neighbor said that she observed Katie panicking and saying that her children ran out of the window. This neighbor's 13-year-old grandson told the police that he saw one of the boys walking on the sidewalk like a caveman, as if he had never seen the sun before. A 61-year-old neighbor who lived in his residence for 30 years said he didn't even know children lived in Katie's house. A 75-year-old neighbor said that she knew children lived there, but had never seen them outside. The police received a longer account of what happened that day from a 60-year-old neighbor. He knew that the boys lived in Katie's house, but hadn't seen them in 3 years. At 3 p.m., he witnessed the boys peeking outside of their bedroom window in the rear of Katie's house. The neighbor realized that the window had been shattered. Moments later, one of the boys was standing on the air conditioning unit outside the window. The boys ran to the front of the house and then down the street. They were not wearing any clothing. This neighbor said that he had concerns about the house for a while. For example, he never saw Katie or Joel take groceries into the house, but he would frequently see Joel with 2 containers of food, which appeared to be ordered to go. Later, the police sat down for a longer interview with Katie. Here's what she told them. Her 2 sons had never been to school, but she homeschooled them. The boys had educational apps on their tablets, and, just the other day, Katie obtained new hooked-on phonics workbooks for them. Katie admitted that she did not have a proper curriculum for homeschooling. As far as her son's educational progress, the older son was able to trace letters and read small words. The younger son was learning how to put sentences together in proper form. Katie admitted that the lock on her son's room and the excrement on their walls had been there for a number of years. The last time she bathed her sons was 5 days earlier. Katie realized that she blanked up and her children deserved better. She admitted the home was not habitable and wrote a 3-page apology letter to her sons. Katie did not want her sons to lose the stability that they had in her house. Both Katie and Joel were charged in connection with neglecting Katie's sons and subjecting them to false imprisonment. They pleaded not guilty. If convicted, they could be sentenced to over 40 years in prison. The authorities removed Katie's 2 sons from her custody, and they are receiving care. The prosecutors said that the boys were unable to function in society and were completely uneducated. They had essentially been confined to their bedroom when they lived with Katie. In August of 2023, the house that Katie and Joel lived in was sold for $135,000. It appears as though the new owner intended to clean up the house and resell it. A neighbor reported that when the house was being cleaned, it smelled like a sewer pond. At one point, he saw 6 21-cubic-yard dumpsters filled with items that had been removed from the house. Some of the items were covered in feces. In October, the house listed for sale again for almost $260,000. Since then, there was a price drop of $10,000. At the time making this video, Katie and Joel are awaiting trial. Joel is out on bail. Katie is enjoying secure housing supplied by the state, which probably smells better than the prison that she allegedly constructed for her sons. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. It appears as though Katie's sons desperately wanted to escape. A woman who spoke to the police said that when she visited a friend who lived near the house occupied by Katie and Joel, she saw the boys excessively staring out of the windows. Their faces were pressed against the window screens. On the day they finally escaped, they were covered in blood. They may have been injured by glass from the broken window. This must have been a terrifying experience for them, especially considering how they probably had no idea what to expect. One neighbor suggested that the boys looked as though they didn't even know the outside existed. Item number 2. There is not much information available about what could be going on as far as mental health and personality factors in this case. Neighbors said they thought that Katie was on drugs or mentally challenged, but that's just their opinion based on brief interactions with her. No official sources indicated anything like that. There were reports that Joel would regularly mow his lawn late at night while wearing a headlamp. This is strange, but it does not appear to have any connection to the allegations. Allegedly, Katie and Joel perpetrated revolting offenses, like keeping Katie's sons locked in a bedroom, boarding up a window, and exposing them to hooked-on phonics. In addition, their hygiene was horribly inadequate. One neighbor said it looked like their hair had never been brushed or cut. Item number 3. The situation with Katie and Joel has a few elements in common with the notorious Turpin family nightmare that occurred in California. In that case, a married couple named David and Louise Turpin had 13 children over the course of 27 years. They lived in a few different places before moving to Paris, California. For years, they kept their children separated from the outside world. Sometimes they put them in chains. In 2018, one of their daughters bravely escaped and called the police. When officers entered the house, they found that the floor was covered in 3 feet of trash, and the smell was unbearable. David was described as socially awkward. Louise was described as having symptoms of histrionic personality disorder. Both of them had strong religious beliefs based on Christianity, which eventually morphed into some type of witchcraft. The couple taught their children to be afraid of the outside world, which created strong feelings of paranoia. Their children knew that they were suffering, but they were terrified of strangers. David and Louise had their children sleep during the day and remain awake at night to reduce the chances that neighbors would figure out what was going on. As far as the parallels between the Turpin case and the case of Katie and Joel, both situations involved confinement, mistreatment, terrible odor, cutting children off from the outside world, neighbors who were not fully aware of what was going on, and a dramatic escape. As far as differences, clearly, with the Turpin family, the scale was much greater, 13 children, as compared to only 2 with Katie and Joel. In addition, the motivation may have been different. The Turpins appeared to be motivated by paranoia and religious beliefs. It's not clear what motivated Katie and Joel. Item number 4. Sometimes the behavior seen in these types of cases brings up the topic of hoarding disorder, or HD. There's no way to know if that's what happened in this particular case, but in general, what is HD? This disorder involves persistent difficulty discarding possessions, regardless of their actual value. A person with this disorder ends up in a cluttered environment. HD is associated with 4 different personality disorders: schizotypal and paranoid from cluster A, and avoidant and obsessive compulsive from cluster C. The strongest association is with avoidant personality disorder. Other disorders are associated with HD as well. For example, 75% of individuals with HD have a comorbid mood or anxiety disorder. There are, of course, other possible explanations for cases like this outside of hoarding disorder. For example, social anxiety, sadism, laziness, disgust insensitivity, paranoia, or psychosis. In most cases, despite the severity of some of these conditions, people engaging in the type of behavior seen in this case would not be able to mount an effective mental health defense. Now moving to my final thoughts. This case is a reminder that some crimes can be hidden in plain sight. It can be frighteningly easy to conceal terrible acts in what is otherwise a normal neighborhood. A house of horror may be a seemingly endless nightmare on the inside, but look like a normal house from the outside. A neighborhood watch program probably would not have detected the alleged crime in this case, although a neighborhood smell program may have had some success. This case emphasizes the importance of using all of one's senses to detect wrongdoing. Those are my thoughts in the case of Katie Koch and Joel Manke. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.